Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com. Today, we are talking about a subject that I get asked a lot, and yes, we do have in Venezuela, is startups. Startups, of course, you already know, emerging companies that they leverage technology in order to enhance their products or services. So today we are talking about how is the startup environment on the Venezuelan economy. We have already some successful startup companies like Ridery, like Yummy, like Pedidos Ya, and we have a bunch of fintech, payment apps like PayPal or something. And we are being seeing the rise of many emerging startups in Venezuela. And of course, it's a very particular issue, especially on a complicated economy, to say the least, that is Venezuela. And today, that's the subject and how things are going regarding such companies. So let's start. Of course, we already know that Venezuela is yet again a complicated economy. However, when there are crises, there's also an opportunity. You know the old saying, no, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And some entrepreneurs have been able to capitalize on the many difficulties that we have on the Venezuelan economy. And they have provided certainly a great deal of value for the average Venezuelan overall. Now, the interesting thing is that first, let's do a little bit of a history review. Venezuela, one of the richest countries in Latin America, 80s and 90s, also a lot of issues, inequality and such. Then on the early 2000s, the price of oil internationally went sky up. And of course, the economy, the political, the economic policies from the government that were quasi-socialist, quasi-Marxist, quasi-communist. And 2013, we had the stop of the economy on the GDP, and then the GDP collapsed 80%. The bottom, I will say, I will pinpoint it on the beginning on 2018. Now the situation since then still hard, still a lot of issues, however, has improved. And actually on the past couple of years, we've been seeing a growth of 10% of GDP each year. And this year still it's been a slowdown, but we are still poised to grow on the neighborhood of 4 to 5% GDP on 2023, by the end of 2023. Still not that much, but that's better. We've seen sustained growth on the past few years. Of course, the economy, since this 80% GDP collapse, has no place to go but up. Now, that wipes out a lot of prior businesses, and also that created a lot of frictions on the Venezuelan economy. One of the biggest issues that we had on the Venezuelan economy the past decade was internet access, was by far the worst in Latin America, even worse than places like, for instance, Haiti. However, the situation regarding internet has improved dramatically. Still bad, but it's way better. We have a bunch of private internet providers, so we have quite decent internet access today compared to just 3 or 4 years ago. And the other thing we had is, of course, COVID, the lockdowns on 2020 that halted a little bit let's say the positive progress since the bottom of 2018. But on 2021 was a year of opportunities, and those years since 2021 is where we have been seeing the rise of many startups in Venezuela. And the trend is there is a lot of optimism regarding this particular niche of doing business. So, like I said before, lockdowns after the lockdowns had created great opportunities for startups because basically what a startup does, at least the very successful ones, are using technology, leveraging such technology applied for conventional goods and services like ride sharing, like food delivery, like mobile payment apps, you name it, a bunch of those, but still there is a lack of knowledge of the market, so you have to educate a little bit the market, your potential customer, in order to use such apps, because Venezuela is a little bit lagging regarding technological information. Not as much people know things about fintech or cryptocurrencies or just simple app using for different goods and services, like maybe e-commerce, or like I said, sorry, sorry to repeat myself, food delivery or whatever service that you can leverage technology just by the phone and not using the conventional route, like just walking to a physical store, a physical brick and mortar business. Well, there are 6 major KPI, key performance indicators, that you can throw in order to evaluate what is happening with the startup environment right now in Venezuela. And number one is risk. When you're doing any entrepreneurship, any given business, especially startup companies, risk, it is a huge deal of risk involved. That's every place on the world, and Venezuela is no exception. First, you have the situation. There is a lot of friction on the Venezuelan economy regarding politics, regarding economics, regarding supply chain, regarding also customer experience and customer preference. So you have to manage this degree of risk. Remember, risk always exists, but at the same time can be measured, can be managed. So if you have a startup business idea, there is no way, no other way, just try it out, because there is no, of course, you have to do a strategic planning, but you, at the end, you just have to throw a lot of things against the wall and see what sticks. And most of the successful entrepreneurs regarding startup companies in Venezuela, that's what they've done indeed. They just try a bunch of things and start double down on the things that stick to the wall. Number two is normality. Venezuela is anything but normal. And one of the things that the market, the consumer craves in Venezuela is normality, because life in Venezuela for the average Venezuelan is very hard. So finding products and services that create a normality vibe compared to the rest of the world, and also a little bit that resembles to the good standard of living that we had decades ago. So if a startup can create this sense of normality, it can go way, can take you places. Remember, unlike many countries around the world, starting for the United States, but even other places in Latin America and also Europe and Southeast Asia, and you name it, you have the services, for instance, the ride-sharing services that have been, let's say, a decade long. They're already household names, things like Uber and Lyft and Yandex on Russia and Western Europe, and many of these ride-sharing services in Venezuela are quite new. They have been around only a couple of years, and the Venezuelan market loves it as well. They implemented basically the same business model. Of course, they have to adapt it to Venezuelan circumstances, and they're being successful. And not only that, other major, let's say, millennial apps, as I like to call it, they have done the same here, and they're being successful, on particularly on the Venezuelan case, because it brings a normality vibe
for the average consumer that they crave and they didn't have just a few years ago. Number three is the Venezuelan context. When you're doing business here in Venezuela, especially regarding startups, is that on other places around the world, they are trying to reinvent the wheel. So they are trying to very crazy, approaches regarding business, and of course that's the essence of entrepreneurship, especially with startups. Or in Venezuela, what you really want is first understand the context that we have a lot of issues. Venezuela is a little bit lagging technologically compared to, let's say, the rest of Latin America and Southeast Asia and, of course, Europe. So if you can, let's say, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, just bring something that, let's say, 10 years ago was successful on many other markets and is a, I'm not going to say easy, but it's a simple idea and you can figure out a way to implement it successfully. Of course, in Venezuela, on the Venezuelan context, most likely is going to be a success. Number four is budget. You have to understand budget, and of course, any business is kind of the mantra, one of the main issues. But not only that, is also that you have to implement that you have to understand the average Venezuelan consumer, their budget is very low. Actually, they run a deficit budget, talking the personal budget, every single day. So they are looking for a way to decrease that budget deficit. And if you can implement any solution for the average day consumer, the market is going to reward you. Trust me on that. Number five is dollarization. Since, let's say, late 2018, Venezuela is being de facto dollarized, not officially dollarized, but de facto dollarized. The USD is the standard for prices, for structure, for any financial activity in Venezuela. The Venezuelan Bolivar still used, but plays a second fiddle regarding payments and, of course, reserves. So more than 50% of transactions are on USD, and let's say over 80% of the reserve for both private businesses and private households, the reserves are on USD. So that brought some stability, some certainty on a very uncertain economy, and that also create not only increase the confidence on the Venezuelan economy, but also has shifted the mindset, the sentiment, in order to be more positive towards the future. And number six is flexibility. You have to take into account that, of course, there is a lot of frictions on the Venezuelan economy, and when you have that, you have to be very flexible. Compared to the old business, mindset that we had, let's say, in the 90s, early 2000s, even prior to that, more industrial, more technical. The startup, the tech, let's say, the technological businesses are quite different. They have to be very, very flexible. And this new breed of Venezuelan entrepreneurs understand that compared to the older counterparts, where they still manage budgets and payroll and structure the old-fashioned way without being very flexible. And something I want to add is, despite all of this draconian economic crisis that we had on with 80% of GDP collapse, most businesses in Venezuela, they went belly up, they got bankrupt, and it's a sad fact, not only for the involvement of the Venezuelan economic situation, but also for poor business management by their owners and their founders. So it's a tricky situation. Of course, doing business is hard. You are a businessman yourself. It's very, 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 very hard, way harder than most people think. So you have to take into account that flexibility is key, not only for startups, but businesses overall in Venezuela.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again and have a nice day.